The next part of our program today are our 4 fantastic speakers we have lined up. Remember to fill out your forms here and put some comments. Everyone really appreciates that, and write your name after your comment. Our first speaker today is DTM Blake Smith. Blake's Pathway Challenge is to use descriptive language. Here with his presentation entitled 70 Laps, please join me in welcoming DTM Blake Smith.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests, last week I achieved a major milestone. I completed my 70th lap around the sun. To quote the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been. I made it to 70 in spite of myself. I am so grateful the video camera in a pocket era came after my marginal behavior era. Now, I admit I've been reflecting on my life in the wrong way, letting the past 12 months define my previous 828 months. Many of you know I lost my mom this past year, and that altered the colors in my palette a little bit, as you might imagine. My wife challenged me to think about what brings me joy. My immediate answer was my family. Both of my children have graduated college and moved on to rewarding careers. For those of you that don't have kids out of college yet, it's like when they stop using Pampers and you can just wash their clothes. It's awesome. I would tell you about my amazing grandchildren, but I wouldn't want any of the other grandparents in the crowd to feel bad about theirs. It wouldn't be right. Things that bring me joy. Speaking of kids and joy, one of my favorite possessions in grade school was a book on insects. This probably would explain things a little bit. Oddly enough, my first career was in pest control. I studied entomology at Valencia and actually taught some classes for my professor. I loved the creepy crawlies. It was about this time I met my bride-to-be, back in 1985. I remember that well because I had my wife-to-be over for dinner, and she went into the freezer and she asked me why I had an empty soda cup in there. I told her it's not an empty cup and do not open it. I knew she had opened the cup when I heard a scream, "What is this?" I explained to her that it was an Ahlers cristatus, an assassin bug for my insect collection. You could freeze them to sleep instead of using chemicals if you use your freezer. She didn't even care that it was better for the environment. Pest control was my first career. I was in it for a little over 20 years. I loved it. Career number 2 was construction sales. That lasted 6 years. We had a bit of a conflict. I wanted my commissions, and so did they. It didn't work out. No joy. It is said that the Lord closes one door and opens another. My good friend Kim Glainer, Coffee Boy, if he's not here this week, he told me that Motorola was looking for a project manager who could also qualify to take the contractor's exam. It ended up being a perfect fit. Career number 3, no waiting. I loved it. I started as a project manager in Florida, expanded to the Southeast. I helped with the Katrina restoration. I worked with DoD contractors in Europe and Africa. It was a great job. There were 2 constants during all of this. Number 1 was the unwavering support of my family and the incredible support of my wife, Teresa. Teresa has been and is my biggest cheerleader through all my ups and downs. Number 2, the constant has been this club. 5 months ago, I celebrated my 35th anniversary as a Winter Park Toastmaster. The lessons and friendships in this club have supported me both professionally and personally in ways that Well, they defy enumeration. As I was writing this, it dawned on me, 70th birthday, 35 years in the club. Half my life I have been a Winter Park Toastmaster. That's cool. Back to the timeline. 4 years ago, COVID hit, and I was able to retire. That's when the bad stuff started. My demographic changed, and the juggernaut of junk mail began. Oticus, Ergo, Hear Me, Jabra. You know what these are? Hearing aids. Evidently, when you turn 65, you're supposed to go deaf. Didn't know, didn't get the letter. Every week it's hearing aids mail. And then the retirement home ads. Tremont, Rosemont, Ashton. All the pudding you can eat every day. No thanks, I'll eat my own cooking. And then when you go to the doctor, new questions. Have you fallen down in the last 6 months? What am I, walking in with a cane? What is this kind of... Are you depressed when you look at your food supply? Have you looked up from your clipboard? Really? Pete's sake. Okay, now here's a new one. How many partners have you had sex with in the last 12 months? I looked at the nurse. I asked the nurse who she had had sex with recently. She was shocked. I said, that's how I feel when you ask me. My answer is none ya. It's none ya business. Honestly, I wasn't looking forward to 70, but it's not that bad. My wife took me on a cruise last week to celebrate my birthday. We're going back to Europe in the summer for a river cruise, and no, we're not bringing Tim and Carmelo's buddy, Lingering Lou. I still put at least 100 miles a week on my Harley. I've started a 4th career now as a consultant. The good in my life so far outweighs the bad. I can put up with a few morons for the cheaper health insurance. After 70 laps around the sun, I've learned to celebrate the old relationships, and I'm open to new ones. Yeah, I miss my mom, but when we meet again, she'll be asking me what I've been up to. I don't want to disappoint her. I'll tell her about my life, my joys, Sean Tucker's table topic rants. I'll tell her about my past 70 laps. And I'll tell her I'm looking forward to closing in on 80. Madam Toastmaster. Thank you.
Very nice. Someday I'll have all that to look forward to. Maybe not too long, but I don't. Speaker number 2. Please welcome Varkey Periyappurathu, here to speak his mind with his first pathway speech. Good times can build great things too.
All right.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests.
Good morning.
Anyone else grow up listening to stories about good old days? You know, the juggernauts among your ancestors who fought wars, were entrepreneurs, fought for survival in ways you can't even imagine. I used to hear stories about my great-grandparents who were warriors, tax collectors, and businessmen. Every few generations, there would be someone who came along, built something big. Then, well, their successor kind of let it slip away. My name comes from my grandfather, who was named after his grandfather. And let me tell you, my grandpa had a rags to riches story that would put some of the famous Bollywood scripts at shame. He didn't have much, just an 8th grade education. His parents passed away when he was really young, and life threw challenges at him, and yet he kept going. Now, my grandfather, he was no stranger to failure. In fact, if there was an Olympic sport for failing spectacularly and still making it, he would have a gold medal. So he tried and failed a bunch of things. Some legal, some, let's say, questionable. But eventually he struck gold. He started a laterite stone quarry, which was pretty big back in the day where he grew up, and he made a fortune. Like real money. He built his dream home when he was in his 30s. But of course, life had other plans. Around the same time my dad was born, he was the 7th of 8 children, my grandpa fell into a well. Yes, you heard that right. He fell into a well, and not like the cartoonish, fun kind of well. This was serious. He was holding on to his life to a root that was sticking out from the side of a wall. And while he was doing that, he didn't realize his left wrist had been severed and his arm was almost falling off. He was bleeding, and he was hanging on to that root and calling out for help for God knows how many hours before somebody heard him scream from the well, came and saved him. So his left palm was pretty much an ornament after that. It was like this. But, he didn't let that decide his fate. He was bleeding, and he didn't give up. All he could think about was the 9 mouths that he had to feed. He lost everything because he had to pay for the medical expenses. It got infected, got to go into surgery. And back in the day, in India, that was like very hard to find a good surgeon who was trained in attaching limbs and things like that. So picture this, one man on a bike, single-handedly, literally, delivering tea powder bags to middle-class and upper-middle-class families, sometimes 40 or 60 kilometers in a day. And then from there, he grew. By the time my grandpa passed, he had multiple homes, acres of farmland, a lumber business, and several timber trucks. And all of the 8 children were college graduates. So he wasn't just about business. He was also serious about his faith. When I say faith, he took it so serious that he would take bishops to court, like civil court, to fight against what he thought wasn't right. And he won. So the bishops didn't really like him. So he didn't just believe in something, he fought for it. Here's the kicker. One of my aunts once told me that he had figured out the secret to a long life. He would pray, "Lord, don't let me die in debt," and then he would go borrow some more. So he passed away at 94. So if I could live that long, just by not paying off my student loans, sign me up. So think about it. What my grandpa did is because he had to do that. But he wasn't waiting for the perfect moment to make things happen. Even when life was good, he was still not kicking back and relaxing. He kept grinding. He didn't wait for a challenge to prepare for. He prepared, and when the curveballs came, he was ready. So I'm not saying that we all have to hustle like my grandpa, riding bikes for 40 kilometers, delivering things. We have Uber. So I may not have grown up in a slum or fought wars, but I know my grandpa's legacy is just about the struggles he overcame. isn't just about the struggles he overcame. It's about the fact that he built something in good times and passed down a work ethic and perseverance that's still in my veins. So here's my challenge to each and every one of you here. Take a moment right now, no matter where you are in life, and think about how you can make today count. Good times don't last forever, but things you build in them can. Start something, build something. Even if it's small, don't wait for a wealth to fall into or a disaster to strike because you've had enough. Be the person who, when life is good, work towards making it even better. So together, let's make sure our good times can build great things too. Thank you.
Thank you, Varkey. It's very inspiring. Toastmaster Laura Bowman is speaking today about some of the unwritten rules of change in hopes that 2025 is the year we all level up. Laura.
Let me put this on. Do I just leave it here? Good morning. Morning. 5 days till Christmas and 12 days until the new year. How many of you guys are waiting for the new year to make some changes? Start fresh. Yes. That's not very many. Wow, guys. How many of you have been participating in the winter arc? Who even knows what the winter arc is? This is like an Instagram thing, right? It says that you start in October and you get like a 3-month momentum into the new year. I blew it too, so don't worry. Assuming that no one's winning the winter arc and most of us are contemplating change in the next 12 days, I want to give you some of my tips and tricks for change, good change. They always say make SMART goals. You've heard this, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. I love the SMART goal. But the part of the SMART goal I have a little bit of a problem with is the A, achievable and attainable. Meh, it's boring, right? It's bland. I'm more of a WIG girl. The WIG is the wildly improbable goal. It has energy and possibility. Change is hard enough without being really turned on by your goal. The A in SMART wants you to just lose 10 pounds or increase your sales by 5%. Or it wants you to put your phone away during dinner time. Super, great. Attainable bits of change. But the WIG wants you to qualify for the Boston Marathon. It wants you to write a book or take a road trip in an RV for the summer or cook your way through Ina Garten's 13 cookbooks. These are goals that feel big, a little beyond your reach. They call you forward with energy. So my advice is start with a WIG and then reverse engineer with near granular specificity, like an engineer, the behaviors you would have to adopt to make this thing come to life. Number 2, the other bit of advice you often hear is tell people your plans because this heightens accountability. This is terrible advice. Terrible. We have all done this. You reach a moment where you are fed up and it feels like you're ready for change. It's usually after your pants aren't fitting or you have an epic hangover. And then you do it. You make the announcement. And it sounds like this. This is the year, guys. This is the year I'm really going to do it. It's going to happen this time. I'm taking it up to 11, right? You've done this. No, you're not. No, you're not. And 2 days later, the motivation and spark of energy passes and the default mechanisms kick back in. And, you know, the announcement of change was the cathartic act. And now you're getting side-eye from a family member who is saying, so how's the winter arc going? As you're popping Hershey Kisses into your mouth. So if you find a WIG, tell no one. Keep the energy inside. Operate under the cover of darkness. Garden at night, all right? This does not go for behaviors where you really need to raise your hand for help. But anything else, don't tell anyone. If you're going after an addictive behavior, sorry, this is a little more serious. Let's get real about the concept of moderation. I know I talk a lot about cognitive flexibility, and I love moderation in pretty much all the things, except for the behaviors that make your neurochemistry light up like a Christmas tree. All right, guys, if the drink, the food, the behavior, the substance tastes like more, feels like more, is driving more, it's not a behavior that is fit for moderation. That's just my own that's my hot take. If it's driving more, it is not fit for moderation. I was 6 years old when I savagely and kind of unironically licked all of the icing off of a cake my mother made. Sugar has always tasted like more for me, but be real about the things that you can no longer play with because they harm you. You know what those things are for you. Moderation can end up being an invitation and a permission structure for keeping addictive behaviors around long after they have proven to be a problem. Finally, I want to be real about what drives change, and I think our last speech kind of nailed it. And it is not the first of a new calendar year. No, it is not. It's not a well-written wig or a well-planned SMART goal. The thing that expedites change is pain. Pain is the best and most reliable enforcer of change that I have ever confronted. I suspect that you have been backed into the corner by pain and consequence a few times in your life. If you are in that crucible this holiday season, bless that mess. Bless it. Because change is hard, and few people do it well or at all. Pain makes change easier because it wrecks the status quo. If pain has you by the throat, you might be the lucky one this year. It might be you who will take it to the next level and get more accomplished in 6 months than you have in 5 years of relative comfort. As for me, I have a few wigs of my own, and the whole Ina Garten cookbook thing is a red herring. That is not mine. Not what I want to do. But I will be reverse engineering a few of them in the next few weeks. Of course, I wouldn't tell you about them even if I knew what they were. And I will get started right after all the Christmas cookies are gone. Happy holidays, everyone.
Wow, a lot to think about there for me. So. In her song Big Yellow Taxi, Joni Mitchell says, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone." This was certainly true for Mark Ahlers. This morning, Mark shares his story about losing his freedom to drive and how it opened his eyes to the many other freedoms he routinely takes for granted. With his speech entitled Freedom, please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Mark Ahlers.
Since age 16, I've always had a car. It's given me the incredible freedom to drive, a freedom I always took for granted. That is, until August 8, 2020. You see, that was the day I was released from the hospital and was faced with rule number 1 from my neurosurgeon. No driving for 60 days. Well, thank goodness for Uber. My first Uber trip was frightening, not only for me, but for my Uber driver. You see, with the right half of my head shaved and 2 rows of surgical staples still embedded in my scalp, I looked like a cross between a concentration camp survivor and Frankenstein. It freaked out that driver so much that he couldn't stop peering into the rearview mirror, so much so that he nearly rear-ended the car in front of us. I was relieved when he dropped me off, but knew I had to come up with a strategy to avoid a repeat performance by my next Uber driver. Perhaps I could wear a cap. But then I remembered rule number 2 from my neurosurgeon: no hats or caps for 30 days. So what to do? Well, I finally borrowed a technique from Toastmasters. Table topics. I peppered those drivers with so many questions that they were totally focused on themselves. And they didn't seem to notice my freakish appearance. That technique worked well. But after a couple days, I noticed something interesting. Almost all of my drivers had a foreign accent. So from that day forward, I began by asking, "Where are you from?" And with that simple question, I heard some amazing stories. For example, Christina was a 24-year-old from Cuba. As one of the top students at the University of Havana, she was invited to a conference in Nicaragua. It was there that she surreptitiously escaped across the border, and thanks to a phony passport, then flew to Canada and eventually found asylum here in Florida. The thing Christina liked most about the United States was the freedom to earn what other people were willing to pay her, rather than what the government said she should earn. You see, although Christina's parents were both physicians in Cuba, her mother only earned $55 per month as a pediatrician, and her father $65 per month as a university professor. Christina could earn more in one day driving Uber and was grateful to send money home each month to her parents. Jose was from Venezuela, although he wouldn't say exactly how he got here. Jose wasn't shy about saying how much he loved the United States, especially the grocery stores, chock full of food, unlike the empty shelves in his native country. Jose also loved being able to express his opinion about our government without fear of imprisonment or worse. Just like Christina, Juan hailed from Cuba. Although he missed his family, Juan didn't miss his meager salary of $50 per month as a government accountant. Fortunately, he was able to make an additional $10 each month selling notebooks, which he assembled from paper that he stole from his employer. Juan said as long as he didn't steal too much, his bosses looked the other way, because most of them were doing the same thing to survive. Juan's journey to the United States was similar to Christina's, yet very different. Under cover of darkness, Juan and two friends boarded a small boat they had hidden near the shore. After quietly paddling out far enough so they could no longer be heard from shore, they fired up the makeshift motor and headed towards Key West. Everything went well for the first 3 hours, but then the motor stalled out. They were unable to resuscitate it. Although Juan never considered himself particularly religious, he was certain the divine had intervened, because after a